Welcome to this review of project management. Programs and projects. Well, a project is a task, and a number of, should we say, resources and objectives that are met that have a specific objective. A program, then, is a group of projects that have then a similar goal or common objective. Several projects working together to reach, then, one common goal. In order to be considered a program, just like with project management, there must be time boundaries. There must be delivery dates associated with it. We could say that program management then, because it's a number of different, very often interdependent and interrelated projects, is often much more complex and therefore much higher risk than just an individual project. For example, if we're going to do a large-scale deployment across the organization of a customer relationship management program or some type of ERP system, a major change is going to affect several departments and maybe replace several other previous systems. This obviously has a fairly high level of risk. It has the likelihood of any one piece going wrong and affecting all of the other parts. Just like if we're looking at a major program, we also have the problem that if one project does not deliver on time, that also can affect many of the other projects that may be dependent on that project for a certain deliverable or in order for them to be able to proceed. So what are the objectives of program management? Well, of course, the core goal is always to meet the goals of the program, to actually deliver what the expectations and promises and potential that were promised during the original development of the then program mission and the program outline. Throughout the program, we need to communicate with management. Management needs to make sure they're aware if this program is going off track. If there are problems with budget, there are problems with timelines, problems with resources, a lack of cooperation or a lack of support from one area, management needs to be advised so hopefully those roadblocks can be addressed early in the project before they become insurmountable. If we realize a problem in its initial phases, quite often we can address that problem far more effectively than if that problem has continued to persist to the point now it becomes a major hindrance to program status. A program is using many different resources: people, equipment, sometimes the use of contractors as well as internal. We're looking at resources not only from IT, but quite often the people we need from the business to help us out. It's important that with program management, we manage those resources effectively. We cannot afford to have people sitting around because, quite simply, the project is not ready for them. We need to make sure things are scheduled in a way that we can effectively use the resources we have. If people are not being then utilized, we're losing money, and quite often this is going to affect our final timelines as well as sometimes the cooperation. If we've gone too many times without those people having something to do when we've called on them, they may not come the next time we call. One of the realities of life, of course, is that where we had initially an initial statement of work, we had an initial project charter, we had initial then goals and objectives, we know that the reality is this project is going to go through a lot of change. The reality is that in many cases, our understanding of what this system is going to do is also going to be modified as we learn more about the system. I like to use this analogy. When you're a long way away from the city, you're driving towards it and you can see the city, some of the tall buildings, and you can see the city in its context. But you don't see much detail. As we move towards that program or that objective, we now see many of the individual elements more clearly, but we also lose a little bit of the overall perspective. We don't see the city in its context as well anymore until we get to the city, and now we can see individual streets and buildings and alleyways. The problem with this, of course, is that our understanding will improve as our vision improves. And with a very large, complex project, the initial phases were a little bit hazy. Sure, we saw the high-level objectives, but there's a huge difference between what we see as we move into and closer to the project deliverables as compared to what we imagined back in the early stages. We need to manage change. Very often, change is a reality, and we have to be able to ensure that our program is able to adapt then and be flexible enough to be able to meet changing business needs. I like to use this analogy that if I take traditional project management and the way that a civil engineer does. A civil engineer builds a bridge across the river. They understand the requirements and they work with a business to ensure that we are going to meet the requirements of the community. And then they start building. But the advantage that a civil engineer has is that usually the stakeholders don't change and the requirements don't change. Rarely do we see that halfway through building a bridge, do they have to go back and redesign the bridge because it's going to be a railway bridge instead of a road. However, in IT, it's not like that. In IT, we can have started a project, and by the time this project is done, might be a year later, our entire user base has changed. The entire organization might have reorganized. The other problem is that we can have built this solution, built this bridge across the river, and the reality is, by the time we're done, the business has moved so far that there's not even a river there anymore. This is the problem with IT. IT is a very fast-changing world, and the problem where IT is not flexible enough results that in many IT projects deliver the solution the business needed a year earlier, but not the solution they need today. So we have to allow change. But the problem when we allow change is we often then bring in the risk now of scope creep. We bring in many cases, the problems that some of the changes don't integrate with some of the work we've already done. This is where we need to really seek, as auditors, to ensure that we have control over change, but also that we permit and allow change, that the processes are there that can help us to deliver what the business needs, not just what the original project asked for. An important part of good program management is to understand what is going to be done by each individual project. What are its deliverables? What are its boundaries? And in the project portfolio, we'll actually put together then a snapshot of all the interrelated projects that are ongoing at a certain point in time. The IT department needs to understand what all is happening so that we have then the ability to ensure we're leveraging our resources effectively and that we don't have, in some cases, two different projects really trying to work on the same thing and in conflict with one another. So we put together a project portfolio database, a database that lists all of the ongoing work, and this is often managed through maybe a change control board, configuration management board, that lists then all of the projects, and so we have a high-level overview of all of the ongoing work. Now, each project must have a project owner, the person for whom we're delivering this project, the person who's responsible that this project is going to meet the business requirements. It should have a regular status report that says, is it ongoing? Is it meeting its current budget and delivery timelines? What percentage completion is it at? Are there issues that need to be addressed? We outline the schedule, delivery dates, because again, we want to ensure that also the delivery is at a time which is convenient for the business. And those delivery dates could be based on when the business is extremely busy as compared to when it's quiet. They could be based on the delivery of other projects that are happening at the same time. They could be based on sometimes legal requirements, such as compliance, that requires us to deliver a project at a certain point in time. And we should have clearly stated objectives. Within our then project portfolio, everybody should be able to see, what will this project do for the company? That will ensure that I'm attentive to what that project is doing. That's going to allow me now to ensure that I can support as well as leverage those other benefits at the same time. And of course, project management comes down to cost. Cost containment, benefits realization, ensuring that we understand not only the fixed but the variable costs associated with a project, that we look at how we can use our resources effectively. I like to say it this way: you'll never have enough time, you'll never have enough money. So the challenge for us always is to use that inadequate time and inadequate financial resources as effectively as we can. Not getting to the point where we have extraordinary costs because of maybe poor planning early on in the project.